Good day, everyone. This is Reverend Joram H. Kalimutan, Program Coordinator of Asia Pacific Mission for Migrants. I am here to interview Seema Punwani. Seema Punwani is a marketing consultant by profession and an author of fiction novel Cross Connection. She has been living in Singapore for the last 2 decades and has been volunteering with TWC2, Transient Workers Council, in the editorial and public engagement team for the last 5 years. This interview series is part of the Asia Pacific Mission for Migrants COVID Migrant Monitor, aimed to disseminate information on the impact of COVID-19 to migrants, support the advocacy of migrants for social inclusion, and provide them with the necessary service provision and assistance. Seema Punwani is, is with us here to share about the state of migrant workers in Singapore in time of COVID pandemic. My first question to Seema is, what is the situation of migrants, particularly the temporary workers in Singapore, during this time of the COVID pandemic, and how is the Singaporean government addressing the problem?
So as you would know that in Singapore, the COVID situation, everyone thought that it was under control, and suddenly it was not. And it was primarily because corrective actions were not taken in controlling the virus when it came to the migrant worker community. And as we've seen in a lot of press internationally as well as in Asia, that the migrant workers do not live in the most hygienic and safe environments when it comes to protection against the virus. And because of that, spread has gotten spread very quickly. And now I think there are about almost 30,000 cases. And most of those cases on a daily basis are within the migrant community. So for example, there could be 500 cases every day within the migrant community, and maybe just 1 or 2 cases which would be outside the migrant community. So that is how intense the situation is. So that is what is happening here right now. And overall, the migrant workers are in a very vulnerable position. Even without the virus, they were not the most secure people who work here. So Singapore as a country has almost 1/5 of our population in Singapore is foreign nationals. So people who are not from Singapore, people like me who are living here. But within that, almost 300,000 are construction workers who have come here from countries like Bangladesh primarily, India, China, who come here to work. And they earn very low, bare minimum salaries. And there are lots of other issues in their living conditions as well. So what COVID has happened with COVID, all these kind of clinks in the system and all these things that are happening, their working conditions, how they're getting paid, everything is coming to the limelight. But their condition is actually even more aggravated because they don't have work right now. So all of them have to stay inside their dorms. They cannot leave their dorms. And they're very worried about basic things like, how are they going to get their salaries? How are they going to remit money home to their families? So all these issues are as important as just the virus, because hopefully, fingers crossed, the virus at some point is going to leave or get settled, or at least we'll be able to control it to some way. But these perennial issues that the migrant workers face are not going anywhere. And that is the thing that TWC2 wants to focus on. So we usually look after 2 big areas. The first one is salary disputes, and the second one is injury disputes. So there are a lot of workers who are on what is called a special pass. So these are the workers who the employers have canceled their work permit. That means they actually can only stay in Singapore until their case is resolved by the Ministry of Manpower, but they don't really have an employer. So during times of COVID, who is looking after them? Because the employer says, I've canceled the work permit, these people are not my responsibility. The MOM says that they are supposed to be the responsibility of an employer, but they don't have an employer right now. So TWC2 runs the Cuff Road program, where we give free meals to all these all these workers, and anyone actually who needs meals can come to us. Just one of the ways in which we look after the migrant community. We also have open WhatsApp messages as well as a phone line. So they can contact us, they can let us know what they need. And the generosity of the people of Singapore has been tremendous. TWC2 has seen a huge surge in the donations that we receive. So there are lots of people who are willing to give and willing to help. We just need the right infrastructure and the processes to get all this to the workers.
So maybe you already mentioned some of the works of the CWC2. Can you give some highlights on what are the concrete steps are you in CWC2 taking to help migrants during this time of pandemic crisis?
So the key steps, the first one is that at this point of time, the migrant workers are feeling very alone. They are feeling that they are not cared for. They're very vulnerable and scared. So the main thing that we do is that there's always someone that they can talk to. And another thing we always forget is that most of these workers, English is not their first language. And whenever any directive is issued by the Ministry of Manpower or the government, even if it is in a language they can read, it's usually complex for them to understand. So what we have done is that we read everything that the policymakers are doing and what the government is suggesting, and we make sure that there are translated versions available in Tamil, in Mandarin, in Bangla, in Punjabi, so that they actually can read it in their own languages. And for the ones who are not as comfortable reading, we also have recorded messages in their languages so that they feel that they have the information. So that is at the basic level that we are doing. Then we also do very specific initiatives. So recently we are running an initiative called to top up their SIM cards, because their mobile phone is the only way of connection between them sitting here and their families back home. And naturally, the families are very worried because everyone is reading in the press about the condition of the migrant workers here in times of COVID. So they need to have that open channel of communication. They need to be able to talk or at least message their family members. So we initiated the campaign to top up, to help people to donate money to top up SIM cards. I think I have to refer to my notes here so that I can give you the correct numbers. But we have got at least around 45,000 workers have received top up of the SIM cards. So we've right now raised around $500,000, and this is all through donations. So we are also taking contributions, and like us, there are other organizations also. So a lot of the workers from Bangladesh, all of the ones from Bangladesh are Muslims, and right now is the month of Ramadan. So they need things like dates and fruits when they are breaking their fast. So people have been very kind, and we ask for specific items that can be donated. So at one point of time, we found that there were way too many sanitizers and masks, and we didn't really need them. So we give out information to the public on exactly what the migrant workers need and make sure that they have all those things available. They are making requests for things like carom boards and chess boards, board games, because they're all stuck in this room they're allowed to go out only for 2-3 hours. Otherwise, they have to be in that room. A lot of them don't have data on their smartphones, and they try to save the data to make conversations, to make calls to their family, so they don't want to waste it just watching YouTube videos or TikTok videos. So everything has to be rationed. And it's a very, very long day when you're sitting in one room. So we always try to make sure that they have things that they can use to entertain themselves, reading materials, board games, etc. But TWC2's biggest purpose is still going to stay on making sure that these workers are going to be paid, and making sure all their salary disputes, their injury disputes, all these are resolved. Because right now, everyone's attention is on the dormitories, on the living conditions, which is extremely important. But if you ask a worker that, do you want a cleaner dormitory or do you want more money? He's going to say, I want more money. And I want to make sure that my salary is coming to me. And because the focus right now is on healthcare and COVID, as it should be, we don't want the whole issue about the fact that these workers didn't get paid on time because they're not working. All this still needs to happen. So even though the government has issued a directive that all the workers are going to get paid, even if they're not going to work, but there are always some errant employers who may not make sure, or they may cut their pay and say, oh, you know what, we had to move you to a different dorm, or we had to give you different food, so now we're going to give you less pay. So these are the issues we want to make sure are curtailed, and the workers actually get their paychecks on time and they get their paychecks in full.
My last question is, with the pandemic exposing the vulnerability of temporary migrant workers in Singapore, what are the TWC2 recommendations to the government so that migrant workers' rights are protected and that they are not living in vulnerability anymore?
The good thing is that because of the virus and now the whole international and national media, there's a lot of scrutiny on their living conditions. So we really hope that now the living conditions will only get better and their dormitories will be cleaner. There will no longer be 20 people living in one dorm room. There would be certain, whatever are the good things that have been applied now, all the positive measures, we really hope that that will continue. So that's the first point. The second is that sadly, we live in two different Singapores. So expatriates like me and local Singaporeans live in the nice, pretty, shiny Singapore. And the migrant workers live 20 people in a room in the dormitories far away. So it's almost two different realities. But because of COVID, which is a very democratic virus, it does not, it can infect anyone. No one is safe. It has actually brought people to a very level playing field because everyone is the same now. And because of this, the conditions of the migrant workers has raised a lot of awareness. So there are a lot of Singaporeans who first really did not know. It's not like people didn't care. They were not as aware. So it was kind of happening in the background that, oh, they're migrant workers. They work in the shipyard. They work in the construction. They don't affect my life. It's okay. But because of all the press and all the scrutiny, now a lot more people are aware. So we are really hoping that this awareness and this empathy is actually going to continue and will get better. And there would be some amount of merging of the two Singapores and less of the us versus them mentality. And third most biggest thing that we think is extremely important, which TWC2 has been talking to the government about for a very long time, is to have the change of employer policies to be a lot more streamlined and simpler. Right now, a worker's entire future is dependent on the employer. If the employer cancels the work permit, and if the worker cannot plead his case to MOM, he has no option. He just has to go back home. And once they go back home, in order to come back, they have to again do a series of different processes, including the agent fee. And the agent's fee can sometimes be as much as 10,000 Singapore dollars. And these workers can earn $20 a day. So you can do the math on how much time it takes them to actually repay this fee. So imagine you've paid $10,000, you come to Singapore, after 6 months, your employer decides to cancel your work permit and you go back. Forget earning money, you actually have spent money and you won't even be able to recover your agent fees, and then you have to come back again. So we have proposed lots of different ways in which the change of employer system can be done better. That means the workers actually have a chance to change their employer while they are in Singapore. And there could be a system where the work permit can transfer from one employer to the other. So the worker is not wasting his time and his money, more importantly, going back. We are very worried that now that the economy is slowing down, and especially the construction sector, what potentially can happen is a lot of the small, medium businesses may actually just cancel work permits and all these people will be sent home. Come to 1 year, 2 years later, suddenly people need the workers back and all these people have to come back. This is not efficient either for the Singapore economy, and neither it is definitely not empathetic, and it's not humanitarian for the worker. So we really hope that the change of employer policy is going to be something that MOM and the government is going to look at very clearly And we hope it's going to be kept in mind that it is for the betterment of the migrant worker. And the most important thing in this, it should not cost the worker to change an employer, because he should be able to, there shouldn't be any further fees that is levied on him. So if I have to recap, the two most important practical things would be, one, making sure they're paid on time and they're getting their salaries, and in the long run, the change of employer. And overall, as I said, the empathy and the scrutiny that the migrant worker and the living conditions are getting, we really hope that is something that will continue, and they will no longer be the forgotten community of Singapore, but they will be within the community and everyone will treat them fairly. I mean, it is a tragedy, and it's very drastic. It's a whole new normal we all are living with. But what we can only hope that when we come out of this new normal, we have learned lessons and we are actually behaving in a much more humanitarian way. And we are putting processes in place to make sure that the migrant workers are better off than they were before.
Thank you, Seema.
Thank you very much.
Friends, this is Seema Punwani, who shared to us the situation of migrants in Singapore in time of COVID pandemic. Good day and good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.